Now you can see the reason for the thread in the bulkhead. Been able to bolt that on nicely. Okay, so what I've done has been to drill all of these holes, and I've put them at across the center, so that in fact the weight of the pressure is going to be held by the 4 bolts nicely placed around the center point. Second thing I did was to drill the holes with a small drill, which will enable the presumably I could tap a hole, I could tap a thread into those. But then the next thing was to bolt this in place, hold it then in the drill, and put one of the holes right through, which I've done there. The second thing was to drill this hole out, just this one, at the full width of the bolt. Then I'm going to now bolt this all together, line that up, and use this hole to guide and square this tap as I run it through. Put the bolt in through the other side, tighten it down, and then do the other 3. That way it'll all be square. Okay, so here is number 1. That's now right over that hole, and I'm just going to do this now by hand. Won't be that difficult. That will hold this tap. The tap is a tiny bit bigger than the bolt, so it's cutting a little bit, and that's completely fine. But when it gets down to the perspex, it's going to cut a nice thread into that. And that's going to be nice and straight. You can see that coming through there. I think that's good enough. That is very nice indeed. That is very nice indeed. That's it. Lovely. Bolt that in place, and what this will now give me is a nice tight purchase to drill the other 3 holes with the tapping size drill, and then I'll open them out, tap them all through, and I've got a very nicely centered gearbox. Right, now so I can run my tap through each of these holes now. This of course is my testing tube. It's not going to be the one that's going to be in the submarine, but all of this is working nicely, and I'll see you later when it's all bolted up, ready to go. Of course, when that isn't in, these bolts will just hold this now perfectly in alignment. Very exciting. Pretty easy too. Now the final thing that I'm going to do is just make sure that I mark on here, as this is really rough, I know, but 2 little marks on here, 2 marks on here, 2 marks on there, and I know which way this is going to go around. That will be fixed forever. Okay, so we've now got these bolts in place. I haven't screwed them all in place yet, but the next thing I'm going to do is cut these center holes out. I'm just thinking at the moment whether I want to actually put a bush inside that area, or whether I'll just make this what shall I do, John? Think. So I've just opened these holes up a little bit more to make this a nice fit, and there we have it. Don't need to bolt that anymore. That's perfectly lined up, and I can now begin to bore these out to take the main pulley, the main gear. Okay, making decisions on the move here. I've decided that this complex bush I don't think I'll make for here. I think I will, at the end of the gearbox, which of course is this section here, I'll just turn out the hole to be a neat fit. I'll make sure that this hole through the perspex is a neat fit. And then I'll make the bush to fit in here, so that in fact it will hold that nicely at that side. On this side, however, because this is brass and this is brass, I will turn this out more and I'll make a bush in that kind of shape, because that'll protect the mechanism and I can easily replace it. But I think here that will be fine. I can't see that I'll have any problems with that. I mean, these things don't spin like propellers. That's what we'll do. So I'm just drilling these out size by size, slowly. Doesn't take long to do this job, but acrylic tends to bite a bit, so you need to make sure you're not trying to do too much with each drill. That is really sweet. Nice fit. This one also goes in here. And then we have this one, which is also a lovely fit. That's all good. All done. Now, talk about changing plans as we go along. This is what I'm thinking. This is now the interior. You can see that fits in very nicely. There's a ridge here. All I'm going to do is make a very simple washer to sit inside this this recessed part, which is going to be thick enough to enable it to mate with that surface and stop this wobbling, and it will make it nice and flat, and I'll make it out of nylon, and I think that will do the trick beautifully. Just cut this off with a hacksaw. This is round plastic. It's a nylon kind of stuff. I specifically said at the plastic manufacturers I want something that's going to turn nicely, and he gave me this. That's fine with me. Very simple bush number one. Now there's no movement, no play, and that slips beautifully on that nylon plastic, whatever it is. That's really, really nice. No need for steel bearings here. So I've bored out the bush, which will fit over here, but now I have to just find out how thick I'm going to have to make the flange at the back of it. So I've got this on metric. It's 3.3 millimeters. .3.25 millimeters, and the thickness of this is 2. So it's just less than it's just over a millimeter thickness I want on the flange. That's it. Okay. And the rest of it though needs to be turned down to 472. Now I have to say this nylon rod really does turn very nicely, and it works really well. So that just fits into there. This goes onto there like that. Now this slides over here. That does slide nicely, and this goes onto here like that, and there's no play, and that is turning beautifully. I'm very, very happy with this little sucker. I'll put the screws in just to check first. So I found this gearbox is clamping up, it's too tight, so I just need to reduce that. So using the simplest method I can think of, which is okay, should do the trick.